Hello my crafty friends. In today's video I'm going to be creating a background page for a junk journal, and this video I'm going to do a little different to my other ones. Normally my videos are high speed and I do a voiceover explaining my process. For this one though, I think I'm going to make it at regular speed and sort of talk through the video as I go along, so sort of you can follow along if you'd like to. So I've never really made a video like this before, so do bear with me. I'll try not to do too many ums and ahs, and hopefully the project is a success by the end. So just quickly, if you wanted to gather some supplies to work along with me, I'm going to be using some inks. I've just got the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide sprays, and I also have the pad. You don't have to use inks. You could also use watercolors or acrylic paints if you have that. I'm going to make this sort of a vintage feel, so I'm looking more for like the browns and the old rusty tones. So that's just for the base. I also have some gesso, some white acrylic, a spray bottle with some water. I have a black ink pad with a stamp. I'm using my script stamp for that. I have some black watercolor paint. We might do some splattering. I have a stencil. Any stencil will do. I thought I'll just use this design and see how we go. Little bits of cardboard which we'll use for the gesso. And I have an acrylic plate. It's just from one of my acrylic stamps that I use for the inks, to transfer the inks. You don't, of course, have to have one of these. You could also use a piece of plastic, like from a Ziploc bag, or even a vinyl surface, or you could go directly onto the paper. It really doesn't matter. This is not sort of how it has to be. This is how I will do it, and we can find other ways to make it work if you don't have all these supplies. And then for my paper, I've just got a piece of A4 watercolor paper. You could also just use regular copy paper. I'm just going to try on the watercolor paper because of the texture, just to see how it'll differ from the plain ones that I've made before. So the only part I'm going to stop and not film is the drying. When I'm using the dryer, I will stop those sections. I don't think anybody wants to watch 15 minutes of drying, so I will just cut the video there and then come back when I'm finished drying. But other than that, I'm going to try and do it sort of live, but not live, if that makes sense. So to start, I'm just going to put some background paper, just plain white paper, just behind my project so it doesn't spill so much over onto my background page. I sort of use that for all my backgrounds. So I'm just going to pop this underneath and try and keep everything in the frame so we can just get started. There we go. So I'm going to start with the Distress ink. This is Vintage Photo. It's a Tim Holtz Distress ink, and this one I just use and I put sort of directly, press it onto the acrylic plate, and then I do spray a little bit of water on it just to help the ink move. And then I also do a little bit of a light spray on the actual paper. Let me just check I have the right side. Yes, I do. So I just put a light spray just to help the ink move, and then we're just going to press it down and just pull it along. You want an uneven kind of feel, and we'll just put then some more. The nice thing about these oxide inks is that they do layer. So once they're dry, if you put ink on top of them again, the ink goes on top of that layer. So you can actually layer with your coloring, with your colorings, which is really good. So it's got beautiful patterns that come through there. I like to just smear it and push it anyway, really. You can also add a bit more water with the spray. This is just a spray bottle that I got from, I think it was Kmart. It's from the section, the cosmetic section, where they have the little travel bottles like for shampoo and stuff, and they had a little spray bottle in, so very inexpensive. Or you could actually use an empty spritz bottle from anything else you have in your home. I'm just going to do another layer of this. So we'll just do, I've never actually worked with this kind of method on a big piece of paper. It's normally my little cards, so it's a little bit new for me too, but we can learn together, which is good fun. So what I might do now is maybe just dry this, and then I'll do the next layer with the different colors on the top. So that dries pretty quickly. And what I was thinking, actually, if you don't have these inks, you could also use coffee or tea to stain it in this way. You'll get a similar effect. So you could just make some, like brew up some coffee and just splatter that on, or smear it the same way, and the same with tea. So now I'm going to, I'll just leave this, it doesn't matter if it's got the other ink on, and I'm just going to use some of the Distress ink. So you just need to give them a good shake. I'm not going to spray them on, I'm just going to dab them from the inside onto the plate. The spray covers a little bit too much area and I can't quite control where it's going, so I prefer this method. So this one is called Scattered Straw, and I'll also mix it with some, it's called tea dye. I did shake these before, but I'll just give them a shake now too. So we just dab that on. This would work, like I say, with watercolors too. And we'll just give that quite a bit of a spray. And then we're just going to smush that down and let it pick up the colors. Just a little bit more. So it's picked up like a goldy yellow color, and there's some darker areas there. The fun thing with this technique is that you never really know what you're going to get until you lift the plate. It's like really, I think it's quite exciting to see the different designs that you're going to get. I think the trick is to put quite a bit of water. It helps the colors move. And then I'll use the darker one too, which is called Brushed Corduroy. So it's all just these browny tones, vintagey tones. I think that looks all right. I might dry this too, and then maybe just go one more time with the vintage photo, just to bring that color back to the foreground. Before I put the brown, I'm going to take just some water with my paintbrush, and I'm just going to splat here and there. Now what this does is, if you leave it for a few seconds, the water reacts with the oxide in the ink, and when you press over it with a tissue or a paper towel, it actually lifts the color. Well, I hope it will. So I'll just leave it for a little bit just to get it sort of activated. Is that the right word? And then we're just going to press down. You can see it's lifted some of the color and light in certain areas. I like that. Okay, so now we're just going to do a little bit more of this. That looks good, I like that. And as you can see, like I was saying before, it actually layers, so the darker has gone over the lighter one, so it doesn't sort of blend into it. It does stay on top, so it's a good way of layering. You'll hear me use the word layering and texture quite a bit because it's two of my favorite things when I'm creating. I love layers and I love texture. Oh, there we go, I like that. Alright, so let's just dry that. And I was just thinking, I think I might be a little bit cheeky and add a little bit of color to this, because I do like a vintage color, like a vintage feel with turquoise. It's sort of my favorite color combination. So I'm thinking, and I hope I don't wreck it, I'm going to try the turquoise of the Color Burst pigment powders, these powders from Ken Oliver. Now, I have used them before. I don't have a lot of practice with them, and I just know that they're super concentrated, so you only need very, very little, and I do tend to tap it a bit too hard and get too much, so I'm going to try really hard just to try and get very little out. I'm thinking of maybe just doing it sort of down on the edges, so as if the color is coming in. Because thinking of this as a page you're going to have in a journal, if it's folded in half, the color would be sort of on the outside. So let's just see how we go and hope we don't put too much. So I'm just going to do the spray first, just down the sides, and then we're just going to tap it ever so gently. I do hope I managed to do this because I'm a little heavy-handed sometimes. I'll do it quite high. There it goes. I don't know if you can see it yet. It's like magic happens when the color starts to spread. Put a little bit on the side. Yep. Now it doesn't look like a lot, but it actually is. And we'll just spray a little bit more to get that. Look at that. I love it. It's like magic happening. I'm just going to leave it to run just a little bit. Just here and there. I don't want it too far in, but let's just see where it goes. Sort of to do its own thing. Look at that. Oh, I like it. Okay, and oh, that looks good. So you can see it's like really, really dark, even though you tap just a very little, which actually makes these powders really good because you only need very little, so it'll last for forever, unless you're a bit heavy-handed like me. There we go. I actually think I like it just like that. All right, I'm just going to dry this. I'm so scared sometimes to, if I think, oh, it needs a bit more water, I'm thinking, oh, what if I put too much water and then it spreads out too much? I'm sure we all feel that, well, most of us, that you're very scared of wrecking things sometimes. Like you really like the way something looks and you're afraid. And I really need to let that go and just keep trying, because that's how we learn. And I will actually maybe just spray just a drop more there. Now what's the worst that can happen? We can start again if it's a total failure. I'm really happy with the way that came out. You can see the colors. It's got like a lime green that's actually shining through, where it's sort of blended. And it's got beautiful, like, oh, beautiful marks, dark areas, light areas. I'm thinking I might just add a drop more turquoise just up there, just to balance it a little bit. Just a little bit. Oh, no, nothing's coming out. Oh, there we go. I might just leave it like that. And let that do its thing. Brought up like a lime green, which I think also looks really nice. I'll just strip it off the page. There we go. So our base color, I think, is now ready. I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going to use another technique that I really like with the gesso, and I'm going to use a piece of cardboard. It can be any cardboard, really, just from the back of a drawing book or magazine cover, anything really. Just a bit sturdy. Just cut it about as wide as you want it, and I just dip it in the gesso, and then I'm going to make marks up and down on the page. Now, if you don't have gesso, you could also use white acrylic paint, but I do find when you're using inks, especially the powders, the colors tend to bleed up into the acrylic, so you might not have it stark white if you wanted like bright white. So I tend to use the gesso. So we're just going to go just here and there, just in some thicker areas, some darker. This is just adding more texture and lighting. Sorry, I'm not sure what word I'm looking for. Make the area lighter. And I do like the texture. And it's okay if the paper's buckling a bit, because then when you're doing this, it's not always going in flat rectangles. It's doing different designs and areas. You can go right off the page. As much or as little as you want. I like some areas a little thicker than the others. And you can see it sort of has given the page a whole different feel, and it's given it more dimension. You certainly don't have to do this part of it. You could have just left it plain as a background, and that could have worked as a page too. I just like to build onto it just so we can experiment and see what else we can do. It's actually, even the gesso has picked up some of the turquoise, but that's okay. Just adds more to it. I do like some areas a little thicker, so I might just it's really fun to play and just keep, it's very relaxing, and you can experiment and try different things. Alright, I think that's enough of the gesso. Give that a good dry. Once the gesso is really nice and dry, you don't want it sticky or tacky at all. I'm going to do a little bit of stamping now. I just use black ink because I do like the contrast. I use it quite a bit, and I just have this acrylic stamp. It's like a vintage script. A lot of people have asked me where I've got this from, and I need to remember I've had it for quite a while and I can't really remember where I got it from, so I want to see if I can find information on it and put it in the description of this video. So what I'm going to do is just do some stamping just here and there randomly. I don't always want to fill the whole page. I just want certain sections just with a little bit of this just peeping through. Sorry, the whole table shakes when I do this, but that's okay. So you can see it just puts another layer and dimension. You see that? And I really like that. It's very subtle, but it's very effective. You could also use the brown, the vintage photo, if you wanted to just keep it all in the same tones. But like I said, I do like black as an accent, especially on vintage pages. I think that's good. And I'll just do some more. There we go. Now you could actually leave it like this. I think this would make a great journaling page. There's still space to write. You could still stick things on. You could also photocopy it, color photocopy it, so you could have use it multiple times. But I'm going to add a little bit more to it. So I'm thinking of doing some stenciling. So I'm just using the stencil that I have, and what I want to do, I was thinking I want maybe just the circle, so I might just try and tape off these areas with washi tape. I'm wondering if that's going to work, or if I should just let it spill over a bit. Let's see how we go. I'll do that with gesso. I don't have a proper palette knife, so I might just use the cardboard again. And I want just to have maybe just a couple of the spots, maybe like 2 there and 1 there. Oh, let's see if this is going to work. So I might have one sort of coming off the page. So it doesn't really matter if it doesn't keep the exact circle, the exact shape. I'm aiming for that, but I don't know if I should washi it. Oh, let's just go. So we're just going to, and I maybe should have started at the top, but that's okay. Now this specific stencil I've bought from a place called the Reject Shop, which is here in Australia. So they're not, I suppose, the best quality, but hey, they do the job, I think. Let's see if they've done the job. Oh, there we go. I like that. Yes, I think that'll work. Just a little bit of texture. So I'm just going to wipe this with a baby wipe just to get most of it off, so it doesn't I don't want any of the negative going onto the page. You can do that. I think they call that ghosting, where you actually clean with a baby wipe on another area and then some of the design comes through. But I don't really want that at the moment. So I'm going to try and do one here. Maybe like this. Maybe I'll try my little palette knife. It's not a proper palette knife, but maybe it'll work better. So like I said, it's okay if it goes over a little bit. I mean, you can have any stencil you have at home. You don't have to have something that's round. Anything will work. Oh yes, like that. I like that. And then I'll do one to balance it out, I think, on this side. Let's just clean it again. Maybe just there. Oh, that spilled over a bit, but that's okay. I'll just use the cardboard just to scrape most of it off. There we go. Yes, I like that a lot. I think that works, and it had sort of what I had in mind. So I'll just clean that. And what I was thinking, maybe we put a little bit of color in between there, just to pop that out. And I'm thinking of black. So let's just see if we can make that work. I'll first just dry the gesso so we can get the black in between. There we go. Now what I was thinking to do, like I said, is just to put a little bit of black just to make those pop a little bit. And I'm thinking I might just use just watercolor. So I'm just going to mix a little bit in my palette. I don't want it to go too much all over the page. I want it sort of just concentrated there, just to make those pop a bit. And I might just do a bit of a black background. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to water the watercolor down quite a bit. So I've just got the watercolor in a tube, but if you have the little blocks as well, that'll work. Now I know a lot of people, including myself in the beginning, I was very nervous to use black because you just feel it's just so dark and permanent, and what if I make a mess? But I think the contrasts it makes are really worth the risk of trying to do them. So I might just first spray a little bit of water just to get the colors flowing. Now I'm hoping that the color will go in between the grooves and sort of just, there we go. See how it's just bleeding into the little grooves of the pattern. And this helps if you put the water first. It helps it just to run. I will help it along. Now it doesn't matter if the color obviously also goes on the white gesso. That's perfectly fine. It adds to the texture. I'll just let it spill a little bit on the outside of the circle. And I like the unevenness. There's some dark areas, some lighter areas. I might make the middle a bit darker. the water's actually made the color pigment pick up there again. I made it runny, but that's okay, it'll just change the pattern. That's the one thing I love about art. There's no right and wrong. If you make a mistake, you can cover it up, or you can start again. It's not life and death. We're not performing brain surgery. There we go. So that just enhances it a bit. It's not quite so bright white, it's toned it down. What you could also do is just dab just a little bit on the top. Oh, no, that's picked up too much of the black. There we go, and we'll just do the other two. See the green's running. That's alright. It's what happens when you have so many layers like I do. They tend to wake up with water. But that's perfectly fine. I like the way it sort of sprays over. Just put a little bit more. And then just dab it a little bit. I feel this one's still a little bit maybe too bright, so I want to just tone it down just a tad with the darker. Like that. You can just keep adding where you feel you need more accent or tone or contrast. Okay, I like that. We're nearly done, I think. I'm just going to take a black watercolor pencil and just do a little bit of the edging. I'm not going to edge all the way around, I don't think. I might just keep it near where the patterns are. So let me just quickly sharpen this. I just sharpen it with I don't use a sharpener because I find it wears away too quickly. So I just use like a little, it's actually a box cutter, and I just shave just the wood off, so just the lead is exposed. It's a bit tricky, so please don't cut yourselves and don't try this if you don't feel confident. I've just been doing it for a while, so I find it pretty easy to do, but a sharpener is also just fine. So I'm going to dip the nib, the lead of the watercolor pencil into the water, just the tip, and then I'm just going to do some lines just around very roughly, and I'll just keep dipping it in so I get some thicker areas. I want it quite rough, and then I'll do up the side here, thick and thin, squiggly and not squiggly. Just adds a little bit more interest. Now if you have expensive watercolor pencils, you don't have to do this part. I've just bought a very cheap set. I think they were $5 for 24, so it's okay if I'm popping them in the water. I think eventually the wood does get a little bit soft, so you can eventually wreck them, but for this purpose I think they work fine. But don't use expensive ones if you have, for this technique. Maybe not the best idea. It's a little too dark, so I'm just going to put a little bit of water just to lighten it a bit. I'm actually wondering if we could use the pencil inside here, just for more of a contrast. You can just follow the lines. Oh, there we go. Just always keep trying things. I like that, it's sort of toning down the white a little bit more. I like how this one is sort of hidden, sort of in the one side and then showing in the other. I like the way that one came out. There we go. Now I'm thinking of adding one more thing and then I think we're done. It's a little bit of black splatter. I do like a little bit of splatter here and there, and I'm thinking maybe to do it because these two corners are sort of already, we've got their design with the stenciling in the corner. I might sort of do a little bit over here and over here just to put it together. So what I'll do is I will cover the other areas, sort of maybe just a little bit there. I don't want it everywhere, so I'm just going to use the watercolor again, just a few drops. I find if you tap it on your finger it makes more of actual drops, whereas if you flick the paintbrush down it makes more of a line of paint, and I want just little drops, so we're just doing it this way. And then a little bit on this side, so I'll just cover this. Just a little bit at the bottom here. It's going more on the white paper than my project. Ooh, I like it. What do we think about that? Oops. Right, let's dry this and see how it looks. Well, I'm actually quite happy with the way this turned out. It's got some beautiful textures, lots of layering, lots of different patterns. See the splotchy here of the brown, and I'm very happy I added the turquoise because I think it adds a different dimension. So there we go. Let me just move this so we can have a proper look. Not the cleanest background. And there we go. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you've maybe learned something new that you'd like to try, or that you've been inspired. that would be make me really happy if you find inspiration from this to do something for your junk journal or for your art journal. So I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and if you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that too. And I'll have lots more videos coming in the next few days. I try to load 2 or 3 a week, depending on time, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.